Okay, so we're going to take a quick look at a temperature versus solubility graph. And there's a couple things I want to point out to you. Looking at the axes, the easiest one to understand is temperature. So it goes up by increments of 10 degrees up to the side. The second side I want you to look at is what's referred to as solubility. So it's grams of solute, so some sort of mass of solute, per 100 grams, which is the same as 100 milliliters of H2O. We need to standardize the amount of water that we're using, because if we use more water in some trials, we would obviously dissolve more substance. So we have to standardize that amount, and a pretty standard amount is 100 milliliters. So it's telling me how many grams of whatever the solute is, and they have many of them labeled, will dissolve in 100 milliliters of water at a certain temperature. If you notice, almost all of them increase. But if we see here, we have NH3, which definitely decreases as the temperature goes up. And that's because it's a gas, and gases tend to decrease with an increase in temperature. And so I want to look at how we're going to read some things on this graph. So I'm going to switch to the next slide. Here I have a much bigger version of this graph. And things that we need to know how to read is questions say, at 40 degrees Celsius, which substance is the least soluble? And so I can look here at 40 degrees and trace that up to here. And that one will tell me that KClO3 is my least soluble. Okay. At 20 degrees Celsius, which substance is the most soluble? Well, here, and I'll trace it all the way up, my one that's the most soluble is potassium iodide. The number of grams that dissolve, I read this across, and it's somewhere between 140 and 150. Obviously, there's a little wiggle room, but maybe somewhere around 147 grams are soluble at 20 degrees Celsius of potassium iodide. So it's highly, highly soluble. Sometimes things will say, at what temperature do ammonia and sodium nitrate have the same solubility? So if they have the same solubility, we're looking where they intersect. And where they intersect is right here, and that temperature is somewhere between 10 and 20 degrees, so, maybe 14 degrees Celsius. They have the same solubility. We also can look at the examples that we had in lab. So if I move to my highlighter here, if I look at sodium chloride, which we used in lab, and potassium nitrate, which we also used in lab, we started with water temperature in Celsius. So we started with something, we started with something, I don't know, like 25 degrees Celsius. So if we look at this, we see that potassium nitrate is a little less soluble than sodium chloride. That amount, although it looks like it's a lot, it's per 100 grams, we did per 10 grams, it's hard to see the difference in that amount. So sodium chloride dissolves a little bit more. When we heated it up to close to boiling, so somewhere around 70 degrees is probably when we noticed it, if you notice, sodium chloride barely changes in solubility. There was almost no difference in how much dissolved, whereas potassium nitrate, in the amount that we have, dissolves completely because it's much, much more soluble as the temperature increases. And so then when we cooled it back down, we came back down to around this temperature down here, and again, they had close to the same solubility. We would need to be able to visually see it. We need to have such a large difference in amounts. The other thing we'll sometimes be asked is how much more would dissolve. So if we're looking at the sodium nitrate, how much more dissolves when we go from 20 degrees Celsius to 50 degrees Celsius. So at 20 degrees Celsius, I'm here, and I dissolve, let's say, 83 grams. And here, we're going up to 50 degrees Celsius, so I'm looking here, and I dissolve about 112, 113 grams. And so if I subtract those two, I have about a 30-gram difference. So 30 more grams of sodium nitrate dissolves between 20 degrees Celsius and 50 degrees Celsius. So the types of questions you'll see for this is just reading a graph. Sometimes you'll be asked how much dissolves in 200 milliliters. And so in this case, let's look at, we can look at potassium nitrate. So potassium nitrate, we have potassium nitrate at, let's pick a nice easy one, 60 degrees Celsius. And that means 90 grams dissolves, okay, in 100 milliliters. In 200 milliliters, we would have 180 grams in 200 milliliters. So the questions you'll see about solubility mostly involve reading a graph and interpreting things off of a graph. In terms of your notes, exactly what are you going to write, because there wasn't really things to write. You can use the graph in your packet if you'd like to make some marks and make some sample things, because I'm going to give you another copy of that graph to use to complete the assignment, but you have this on, I believe it's page 6 in your packet. And you can tell me a few things about gases, what gases do when solubility, what happens to gas solubility when the temperature changes, and what you notice about different trends in terms of solubilities. So this is a little bit different flipped class notes where you're going to have to put down things that I have said as opposed to just copying what's up on the slide.